Hey, and welcome to The Solid Verbal. Now would be a perfect time to consider subscribing. Yeah, that little subscribe button for year-round premium college football content. That's it. Here's the video. Enjoy. Subscribe.
The big news last week was, of course, that Arch Manning, top overall recruit, class of 2023, picked Texas. Yeah. Did that surprise you?
No, I mean, there had been a lot of buzz that they were probably going to be the school that he picked. I think, what surprised me is that probably in the most it's ironic because you have, your two uncles are media icons. He does it on the most unassuming day of the week, like on a Thursday morning. The first tweet he ever tweets is, "I'm committing to Texas." I think I was more surprised how he did it. You would have thought that, with a family that's got a production company, there would have been maybe a little bit more to it. So I'm not surprised. I thought once Alabama really started honing in on Eli Holstein, that was when they knew that the writing was on the wall. They weren't going to get Arch. So I think I'm more surprised about the timing of it. I thought this might creep into the fall a little bit, but not too surprised. There had just been so much buzz about Texas and getting him that it did seem like all signs were pointing to the Longhorns.
Do you think that the manner in which he announced he was going to Texas is at all representative of who this kid is as a person? Because so much of what we've heard throughout the recruiting process is that he's pretty low key. He's got good people around him advising him who have been there before, but he didn't quite take to the pomp and circumstance the way many of his peers have.
Yeah, I think that's actually the perfect description. That's why I guess even though I say I'm surprised of the timing of it, the whole first tweet ever on a Thursday morning kind of speaks to him. He doesn't do a lot of interviews himself. When you see the interviews, it's mostly with his high school coach. The Manning Passing Academy was last week. All the interviews coming out with the Mannings were everybody but Arch. He's a very low-key kid, just kind of one of those guys who just doesn't feel the need for the spotlight. And it's understandable when you consider that family has been under a constant microscope. I graduated high school the same year Peyton did. I mean, there's been media following that family around, obviously well since when Archie was playing, but certainly since Peyton was a recruit and then when Eli was a recruit and then over the last 25 years. So he might have just said, hey, you know what? It's better for me to just be off the grid. Everybody's going to track everything he does anyway. And he could kind of control the narrative himself and did it in a very low-key manner. I mean, when your first tweet is your commitment, the last guy I remember doing that was Jonah Williams, who ended up committing to Alabama. He had one tweet. I remember trying to do an interview with him after he had visited, I want to say Auburn. I don't like to do interviews. I just want the attention being on my team. I only have social media so coaches can direct message me. And then his first tweet ever was when he was committing to Alabama. So there's some guys that, believe it or not, in this day and age of brand building, they still are just like, hey, I'm low key. I'll let people know when I have something to let them know.
Well, every year we have a player, every couple of years we have a player like Arch Manning, like Trevor Lawrence, somebody who seems almost impossibly graded, where it would be ridiculous for them to live up to the hype. In the case of Trevor Lawrence, I think we'd agree he came pretty close to it, but I think it's doubly the case for Arch Manning. Not only does he have that high grade, he also comes from ridiculous stock in that, his family is the Mannings. Does he have any chance of living up to just ridiculous hype that surrounds him?
Man, it's hard to say. And here's why. Maybe it's better because he's, Cooper's kid rather than Eli or Peyton, but I've been doing this long enough. Dan, you've been on the West Coast. You remember the Nick Montana years. You remember the Jack Elway recruitment. And, those are two of the greatest quarterbacks that ever played the game. And I had the unfortunate opportunity to have to them both in my region to have to rate them. And, well, how can you do this to Joe Montana's kid rating this lower? How could you call Jack Elway a mid-level 3-star? And Jack Elway lasted a year at Arizona State. Nick Montana went to Washington, bounced, went to Tulane. Last we saw, he was throwing interceptions in a bowl game. It's not the science that it seems. And you would have thought, okay, these guys come from great bloodlines. These guys come from, these great quarterback families. Surely they're going to be safe bets. And, with Arch, really the hard thing is it's, how good is that competition that he's playing? Well, Odell Beckham played there. There's been a lot of great players that have gone on that have played there, but it's a quarterback. We haven't seen him in Elite 11s. We haven't seen him at camps or at 7-on-7 tournaments. How good is he? But then there's also that part like, maybe he is one of those rare kids who does work in silence. And then when he gets on the even bigger stage, it's just a seamless transition because he doesn't let the outside noise get to him. That's always the danger with guys that do love the brand building. So you take a kid who comes from a quarterback family, who comes from a very, just formidable bloodlines, and he's kind of off the radar, as impossible as that may be given the family. This guy might be a kid that is wired differently, that when he gets to college, I mean, this is a kid who chose Texas knowing that Quinn Ewers is likely going to be the starter in 2023, and he's going there almost like Trevor Lawrence did, where, hey, yeah, if I take over the starting job as a freshman, great. Kelly Bryant did an admirable job that year, but he went in almost with the understanding, like, I might have to wait a year to be the guy. I think that kind of shows you that different wiring that he has that makes you feel like this guy may be a safe bet.
Do you think he is the best quarterback in this class?
No. And Dan, you got the receipts, so I'm not just saying that on the air. I think he's good. I think he's very good. I think this is the best quarterback group I've seen in that top 5 group. Maybe the depth isn't as good as recent years, but this is the best 1 through 5 that I've seen. And I don't want to call myself an arch hater at all, because I'm not. But, sometimes they say your best ability is availability. When you don't, I'm a firm believer, I like to see these guys in person before I fully commit and go all in on them. And I've seen Malachi Nelson and Nico Yamaliava, Jaden Rashada, Dante Moore, but I haven't seen Arch enough to just go, oh, yeah, he's a sure thing. You watch the film, you see all those things. He looks good, but I kind of want that in-person eye test to be that final check mark. So until then, I don't know that I could say that. And even when I do see them, I'm such a fan of Nico as a quarterback that it would take a lot for Arch to wow me to be able to catapult to the top of my personal rankings.